Hello and welcome to another standard video. Today I'm gonna revisit the superior Spiderman / Kavaero reanimator deck, which seems to be the most powerful deck coming out of Through the Omen Paths standard. And the goal now is to combine the Mind-Bitten, a 4/4 that lets us play it as a copy of any creature card in our graveyard, except its name is Kavaero Mind-Bitten. It's a 4/4 spider human hero, and we have to exile the card we choose. And we can combine it with Bringer of the Last Gift, which is an 8 mana 6/6 flyer, and when it enters, if we cast it, it essentially swaps the creatures in play with the ones in the graveyard. So it destroys everything in play and then reanimates all the creatures that were previously in the graveyard. And normally it's pretty tricky to include Bringer in a reanimator deck, since it only triggers its ability when we cast it, but because we're technically casting it when we choose it with Kavaero, it still works. So now Kavaero turns into this 4 mana Living Death effect, as it's known, swapping the graveyard with the battlefield, triggering a whole bunch of cards in the process, such as maybe our Vein Ripper, saying whenever a creature dies, target opponent loses 2 life and we gain 2 life. Also decent creature to just reanimate with Kavaero, as it will turn into a 4/4 with all these abilities, including Flying and Ward, forcing the opponent to sacrifice a creature. But if we bring back Vein Ripper alongside a few copies of Harvester of Misery, which will then give all creatures -2/-2 when it enters, if we get back multiple Harvesters, that can turn into -4/-4 or -6/-6, all of a sudden we've got a bunch of Vein Ripper triggers going on the stack, which can potentially win the game on the spot. So that's the power of the Kavaero plus Bringer combo. And then rounding out the deck, of course, we're gonna need ways to fill the graveyard, ways to find Kavaero in the first place, and a few ways to maybe discard some expensive creatures that are stuck in hand. So then that's 2 mana. One of the main reasons to splash a bit of green as opposed to other colors is for Town Greeter, which will mill 4 cards, finding a land among them that we get to put in hand. If it's a town, we also gain 2 life. So Town Greeter's here just to mill a bunch of cards and to make sure we hit our land drops. Since I am playing a relatively low land count, since I am relying on Town Greeter and some of the other card draw effects to make sure we keep hitting our land drops. Then we also have the Harvester, which besides being kind of a combo piece to close out the game with Vein Ripper, is also a card we can use as removal early on, as we can discard it to give a creature -2/-2, otherwise still perfectly reasonable to hardcast for 5 mana, giving all creatures -2/-2 when it enters. And then the Black Overlord's also a key piece here, as it can fill the graveyard even if we impend it early for just 2 mana. It later turns into a creature which can mill even more, and it's also a way for us to get back Kavaero if it's already in the graveyard. Maybe we milled it with a Town Greeter, then at least Overlord can still get it back in hand to make sure we can set up our combo. And then at 3 mana, we've got our draw and discard effects with Kiora, which can also threaten to make an 8/8 token if we attack with a full graveyard. And then the Scholar can draw 2 and discard 2, unless we maybe just discard a flyer or an instant or sorcery. Sometimes we actively want to discard multiple cards, so we can still discard 2 flying creatures, for instance, if we really wanted to. And then another good reason to splash a bit of green is for Awaken the Honored Dead, which gives us a very versatile answer, destroying target non-land permanent on Chapter 1. So this can also take care of graveyard hate cards. If we're unlucky enough to face like a Rest in Peace or a Leyline of the Void in Best of 1, at least we're not just drawing dead and we still have Awaken as a potential answer. On Chapter 2 we get to mill 3, perfect for filling the graveyard. And finally we can also discard a card to return a creature or land from our graveyard to hand. So similar to the Black Overlord, that's another way for us to get back Kavaero if we happened to mill it instead of drawing into one. And then topping off our curve, we've got Vein Ripper and Bringer, which we're mostly trying to reanimate, but occasionally we could also hardcast them. And then I'm trying 2 copies of Vaultborn Tyrant, which can be a little dangerous, since if you do pull off your Bringer of the Last Gift, you end up returning a whole bunch of creatures at once, which in turn will draw you a ton of cards with a Vaultborn Tyrant, so you do have to be a little bit careful, but it's still a nice value card to sometimes reanimate, drawing some cards, gaining some life. If the opponent destroys it, it still leaves a token behind. So it does have pretty good synergy throughout. Just be careful not to draw too many cards, or at the very least put your Vein Ripper triggers to resolve before you draw from an empty library. And then the mana base has a nice mix of shock lands, which we have access to in the Sultai colors, so that's another big plus. And then a couple fast lands, so we have a mix of painless lands, as well as enough lands entering untapped on turn 4, enough basic swamps, and then some starting towns, which can also fix our colors, can maybe even gain some life with our Town Greeter. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the play. We have double Town Greeter, No real way to get to our reanimation creature. So I think this is still a mulligan. This is better. We've got our Mind-Bitten, couple removal spells, Awaken to fill the graveyard. Probably still have to get rid of one Harvester, so we're more likely to pull off a powerful turn 4. Gotta make sure we keep hitting our land drops. Authority, not a huge concern. So for now, can play Starting Town and pass, keep up Harvester. So it is a white tokens deck. They will have some board wipes. Hopefully they're not board wipes that exile stuff. And I'll keep Harvester in hand for now. So I could already Awaken. Also tempted to wait an extra turn to maybe blow up a Caretaker's Talent. Or we can get rid of the Authority for now, which is maybe still okay. But I might regret it if our opponent has some graveyard hate. Opponent does indeed have the talent. Alright, let's see what we mill. An Overlord, a Kiora. So, already interested in getting back an Overlord here, since we have 2 Kavaeros. And get back a Kiora. Opponent's gonna sack Carrot Cake to draw with their talent. And I get lost. Not too surprising. Alright, so we've got a few options here. I wouldn't mind getting back an extra Mind-Bitten, and then maybe Harvester can go. Even though I can also cast it for 5 mana, which would not be a bad play. So I could also decline, keep my hand as is. And then let's go with Kiora first, since we are threatening an 8/8 next turn. Okay, discard those. Can go exploring. And we'll keep that one on top. So our opponent knows what's incoming. Their own Overlord, making some 2/1s, draw a card. Alright, so could start by attacking, and hopefully our opponent trades so I get Kiora back in the graveyard where I can reanimate it once again. That seems reasonable. Do not have double black to cast the Harvester. So, sure, let's start by attacking. Can maybe explore second main. Opponent just jumps. So I don't have to go for it yet. We could wait until we can set up a lethal Vein Ripper with Bringer, getting everything back. Our opponent, of course, doesn't have any creatures to return. So then I need to destroy my own stuff. Because if I do go for Bringer and our opponent has a board wipe that exiles my stuff, that could be bad. So it's kind of a tricky spot. Yeah, let's maybe start by exploring. Town Greeter isn't bad. Can draw into it with a Scholar. Discard Vein Ripper. Okay, so maybe Town Greeter will find my second black source. Alright, now a Cosmogrand, that's fine. And another Carrot Cake. Opponent could have potentially messed this up if they used Demolition Field on Starting Town, because it's currently my only black source. But I guess we have enough swamps to search up that it wouldn't be a problem. Alright, so I think I do risk it with Town Greeter here, because I want to fill the graveyard some more. Found a swamp, so that's perfect. And then... is it better to attack or not? I guess we do get in with just a Steam Core Scholar. Could get in with Kiora, hope they trade, but I don't want them blocking with the Cosmogrand, because then our opponent would just get it back for free, and they know that we have land Kavaero, so if they're paying attention, they would just jump with the Cosmogrand most likely. Our opponent still trades, so now we get the Scholar back. So, Bringer of the Last Gift, please. Wipe the board, and then we have another Kavaero returning, which I don't have a strong preference here. We can just keep it as a 4/4, doesn't need to exile anything in the process. Get to draw a bunch. And Voltborn plus Harvester can maybe go. Don't need to Town Greeter anymore. Something along these lines. Alright, so now if they wipe the board with double Vein Ripper, they should just die. But yeah, if they're Sweeper exiled, we could have been in a bit of trouble. So then maybe waiting until we get some of our own Sweeper effects in the graveyard here would have paid off. I'm having trouble selecting it, but yeah. Giving our own team -4/-4 or -6/-6 would kill everyone on the spot, triggering Vein Ripper, and likely winning the game. And there we go, awesome, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a keepable hand, missing Kavaero, but we've got a lot of ways to access it with double Awaken, Overlord. And then we'll find some stuff to put in the graveyard. Awaken can also give us an answer for graveyard hate cards, should those show up. So we're not just dead to a Rest in Peace or some other card that exiles our graveyard. For now, let us impend. And I'll grab a Harvester, put on the red-white. Could be aggro, although typically don't see Sunbillow as their first land. So this a Naya deck, maybe Naya Yuna could also make sense. Found Kavaero, so that's nice. Already have our Bringer, so now it's just about filling the graveyard as much as possible. And maybe start with Kiora. So one Harvester can go, and yeah, maybe a second one. So we'll give everyone -4/-4 if we go for the Kavaero Bringer play. So now we would like to find some Vein Rippers, perhaps, to drain the opponent to death. Joshua does kinda reinforce the Naya Yuna idea, as we see Bahamut and Fear discarded. Our opponent will get Bahamut back if we go for the Bringer play, so that's good to keep in mind. That being said, I think we still go for Scholar, enable Kiora attack, make an 8/8, and then wait a little bit longer to set up Kavaero, so we can maybe win in one go. Maybe just discard a Scholar. Yeah, Awaken's a little awkward if we're destroying creatures with it. And since I only discarded one card, Kiora's not active, so I guess we'll wait. Because yeah, we would prefer to just start from Chapter 2 when there's no creature worth destroying. Also important to keep in mind the active and non-active triggers and the order in which they resolve. Because if we reanimate stuff in our turn, our opponent's abilities will resolve first. So they might be able to maybe use Bahamut to take out a Vein Ripper. And then we no longer get all those life drain triggers. And there's another Kavaero. Could just awaken Joshua and start beating down. Yeah, it's not the worst idea since we're going to mill 3 next turn with it. And then I'm fine if our opponent uses Yuna to bring back Bahamut. Because then we can destroy Bahamut once we switch graveyards and creatures in play. And with a finality counter we would also exile it for good. And there's Yuna, as we suspected. And goes for Bahamut. Hoping they don't destroy my Saga, but they could. Goes for the Overlord, that's nice. So now Kiora is active, but yeah, I'm probably just attacking with it, hoping, I guess, they block so we can bring it back. Alright, opponent's not suspecting anything. We'll select Bringer of the Last Gift. Reanimate everything, destroy everything, get a million triggers. So we do have 1 Vein Ripper, so that should be lethal here. Doesn't matter in which order we resolve these. All creatures get -6, -6. Which means all creatures die, and that's 2 damage for each creature thanks to Vein Ripper. Could do it again next turn with another Kavaero. And the opponent's creatures will also contribute. So yeah, 2 Reanimator decks. This one just happens to win the game when we enact our plan, whereas Yuna is a little more geared towards the value plan and playing a longer game. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a decent hand. Got a couple Harvesters we can discard to act as removal, and then Kiora hoping to draw and discard some more expensive creatures to set up Kavaero. Up against maybe the mono-white life gain deck. Opponent's got the Pridemate, which is perfect for Harvester, so we take it out before it grows. Definitely a bigger threat than the Bat. They do get to scry 1. And I guess we can play the Scholar, so I have a blocker for the Bat as well. Happy to discard Vein Ripper, could decline and then discard Vein Ripper plus something else. But I guess I'm happy to keep the other cards in hand to eventually cast. Still need to hit land number 4, Kiora can help with that. Hawk into Shelter by Ghost, exile the Scholar. So with a land I could use Harvester to remove the Bat and get our Scholar back. For now, gotta prioritize Kiora. And then Town Greeter I can cast next turn to hit my land drop. Awaken can also be an answer specifically to Sheltered, so we don't have to pay the ward. So 1 Kiora can go. Still tempted to keep a Harvester. Maybe I don't have time to cast another Kiora. Although it would maybe let me discard a Bringer if we draw into it, because we currently don't have one in graveyard. But I am about to mill a bunch of cards, so we're pretty likely to find one that way. By playing Town Greeter we also enable Kiora to make an 8/8. So we'll see. It's going to be a Banishing Light to exile it. Could still destroy with Awaken. but we prioritize Town Greeter into Overlord, hope to mill Bringer so we can set up Kavaero next turn. Still haven't found one. So do I get anything back? Probably Kavaero. Could also go for Kiora once again. Or we could try and hardcast Harvester for 5, although I already have one in hand. Town Greeter would also cheaply mill more cards, can play it alongside Awaken, so that's also not bad. Although I guess it assumes I find a untapped green source, which is maybe not a given. Now Exemplar is a little scarier. It's gonna immediately pick up some counters. And draw a card. And another Vein Ripper. So, yeah, if I just cast Harvester, we get back Scholar. I have a blocker for Exemplar for at least a turn. I think that sets me up the best. Can attack with Town Greeter since it's about to die anyways. And then, do we discard Vein Ripper? Could also be Hardcast if we find another untapped land. But I think it's still fine to discard. So, if I can Town Greeter, mill Bringer, and find an untapped land to cast Kavaero, we could just win next turn with Harvester and Vein Ripper triggering. Can probably afford to take 5, and maybe chump next turn. Unless they remove Scholar, then I don't get that opportunity. So this might still be safer. Another Pridemate, and 1 card remains. Alright, we have an untapped land. So I think we start with Town Greeter, see how that goes. Still no Bringer. Can grab the land. So then I probably shock myself to awaken the Exemplar. And then we have enough blockers back where we shouldn't be in danger. And then I get to mill 3 more next turn to hopefully get there. Could of course be satisfied with reanimating something else, but I think our patience will pay off. Mill 3. And there we go, there's the Bringer. Don't know if attacking first made sense, but we should have plenty of damage to spare. And then we have another Kavaero returning, but the opponent knows that they're dead. We'll get back all our creatures. The opponent also, admittedly, gets a few back, but they'll immediately get wiped up by our multiple copies of Harvester of Misery, which in turn also triggers our several copies of Vein Ripper, have at least 2 in the graveyard here. So yeah, that should easily get the job done. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with what looks like a Keeper. No Kavaero yet, but all the other pieces with Awaken, if we mill Kavaero, we can eventually get it back. Town Greeter to hit my land drops. Kiora discards Bringer. Facing a white deck. Alright, and already milled some beefy creatures. Green-white, now cash grab, so also a graveyard deck, and looks to be the Kona combo deck. So yeah, if they have a perfect draw, they could combo off on turn 4 already. Can maybe use Awaken for interaction. So now I think we still prioritize Kiora to discard the Bringer, hope to draw into Kavaero. And we did not, so discard Bringer and a Vein Ripper. And the -2 from Harvester is not going to be enough to take out Kona, so we would need 2 of them. So do we see the Seriema? We do not. So with this setup, unless they play Llanowar Elves here, I don't think they can combo next turn, since they both need Kona and a way to tap it down. So then we should be safe for another turn, which means I can imp the Overlord as a starting point. Could maybe keep up green if we draw another Town Greeter. Alright, found Kavaero, so that goes to hand. Kiora makes an 8/8, so that also gives us a backup win condition. And then I may as well keep up Harvester, although I don't think it's gonna matter. Could still just use it to get more creatures in the graveyard. And yeah, opponent knows that Kavaero is incoming, which will get back our Bringer, and which will bring back a lot of fun, including Harvester. And yeah, if we discard another Harvester, giving all creatures -4/-4, we might have enough to trigger all these Vein Rippers to just win the game on the spot, especially if I Harvester on my own creature here, which will then also die. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a reasonable hand, missing Kavaero, but the Overlord can maybe find it. So we'll start with the Town Greeter, want to mill as much as possible before we use the Overlord. And Breeding Pool tapped, so we don't have to take too much damage. Milled Bringer and Kavaero, so that's ideal. So now Overlord gets back Kavaero, and we just want to fill the graveyard as much as possible. Opponent on the red-black. No play so far. Can get in for 1. And then we could already Overlord, not in a hurry to play the Scholar. Get back Kavaero. So our graveyard could use a few more creatures, perhaps. So if we go for Bringer, we only get back an Overlord at the moment. Opponent with a Coyote. And just an attack for 2. Alright, now I'm down to Scholar, discard Vein Ripper at the very least. And if I decline, I could discard Vein Ripper plus Harvester, just to get a bit more stuff. Town Greeter and Scholar are both happy to chump. Just want to avoid chumping a Screaming Nemesis, because we would like to gain life this game. It's not game over if they do damage it, but would make things a little bit more difficult. So Kavaero, get back Bringer, get back Vein Ripper, and some other stuff. Bygone Colossus, I see. Opponent's trying to fling it to us, probably. Can give it haste with a Coyote. So that's what they're trying to set up. And yep, Sellsword puts this to 8. And then happy to block. I guess we'll let them choose what they want to destroy. I don't care too much. Takes out Town Greeter. So first we'll attack. Opponent will get the Colossus back as well, so they do get the opportunity to maybe fling again. But I think we'll be alright. Since we get to trigger Vein Ripper. So we're not just dead to the Colossus. Mill some more. And then Overlord can get something else back. And our opponent scoops it up. Awesome. And get to rank up back to Platinum here as well. Awesome, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. This hand is pretty good, but it does hinge on Town Greeter finding blue mana for Scholar. Scholar discard Vein Ripper, Tyrant, and then Kavaero has a few options. Of course, hoping to mill the Bringer, so we can get everything back at once. Opponent on the red-white aggro on the play, so yeah, this is going to be a tough matchup. Still have a chance if we find our blue mana and get to curve out. But our opponent's off to a good start. Pumping Hardclaw, so they could still have plenty of burn spells in hand. Come on, find blue mana, please. And we got there. So grab the Sanctum. And then we could also awaken to maybe destroy a Screaming Nemesis if that shows up. But Scholar discarding both Tyrant and Vein Ripper, since we can choose both. Don't have to just discard one flyer. Tyrant might be the better card to bring back. Although against the Slick Shots, having a flyer is also important. But yeah, the Scholar does fly. So I can jump here. And then Scholar over Kiora. Still need land 4 as well, that enters untapped. We found it, and we found Bringer. So I can decline, discard Bringer. And then between Vein Ripper and Voltborn, we will have Harvester killing a bunch of stuff, so maybe Vein Ripper's the pick here. And at 15 with a blocker, I don't think we're in danger of dying. But yeah, that's a good starting point. If they have some more cheap burn spells, we might get close to that. Boros Charm for double strike is 12 total. Or rather 13 with the extra Hardclaw trigger. So I can't actually shock in the Watery Grave. And yeah, that's gonna make all the difference, unfortunately. Because yeah, if I do play my land, I think we can pretty easily stabilize. But sadly, it's a shock land. So, do I have any hopes of surviving this? I can awaken, destroy Hardclaw. Opponent needs to have literally nothing. But that's my only hope, since Kiora still leaves me dead to the 1 damage plus Slick Shot. So, yeah, we're most definitely dead, but yeah, still goes to show how close it was. This was also with us on the draw, so very thin margins against aggro. GG's, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw, and seems keepable. Hoping Town Greeter mills something big up against a white life gain deck. So these Harvesters should also come in handy. So not in a hurry to play Town Greeter, can use Harvester first. Decent answer to the Channeler before it gets out of hand. Could wait, I don't think we get punished. Opponent moves to attackers. And now we can strike. Counter onto Healer's Hawk. Since my third land's Breeding Pool, I'm sort of incentivized to play Town Greeter, since that's somewhat likely to find a fast land, so then I can still Breeding Pool to have 4 mana on turn 4. Opponent got back the Channeler with Scout for Survivors. So could Harvester again before this picks up another counter. Would mean the Healer's Hawk also grows again. So yeah, kind of a interesting spot. Currently only have Harvesters in the graveyard, so if Town Greeter doesn't mill anything big, maybe I shouldn't count on Kavaero too much. And then I think going for another Harvester's fine. Now Exemplar means I think I actually go for Healer's Hawk instead now. That way our opponent doesn't gain any life, so it doesn't get to trigger their creatures. Otherwise they get to grow and draw a card. Found land number 4. But yeah, Kavaero's just not all that exciting here. So we'll start with Town Greeter, and then most likely we can Harvester as well. Alright, we milled some good ones. So I'm down to just keep up Harvester. Or do I? So Kavaero could turn into a Vein Ripper, still not really game ending necessarily. Or we can go for the Overlord and try and set up a second Kavaero perhaps with a Bringer. Close call. Any chance I want to hardcast a Harvester next turn is kind of the decision here. They're somewhat likely to gain life, but it's not a guarantee, because a lot of creatures need to attack first. Yeah, let's just go tap Blooming Marsh, pass, and then next turn we can reevaluate. So Town Greeter could jump. Could also wait to maybe get back a Vein Ripper, so we get extra life out of it. It's mostly if I was planning to cast Harvester, then I may as well jump and save myself 3 damage. Now we found Scholar, which I think is worth going for, since if we draw into the Bringer, we can set up a much more powerful Kavaero. Discard double Tyrant. And then do we keep up Harvester? I think so, because it allows me to maybe trade for the Exemplar. Banishing Light will now exile the Scholar. So then probably take out the Channeler. Or I can jump and then cast Harvester. Although I do have another Scholar I wouldn't mind using. So maybe for now I'll just jump, postpone my decision. Find Kiora. So we'll start with a Scholar. Overlord I would like to impend. How many cards have we seen? Not quite half of my deck. Because if I can mill the Bringer, we can just pretty much win the game on the spot here. Although if our opponent's last card is a removal spell and I just impend Overlord, I put myself dead. Which is not ideal. So, I'm gotta keep a Harvester in hand at the very least. And then I guess I get rid of Kiora. Play this tapped and pass. I can maybe block Exemplar, finish it off. Or I can take out the Channeler. If we do this now, Scholar might survive. Get to untap. So now we've got options aplenty. I'll start with impending the Overlord. Could also cast it, to be honest, and then just get back Harvester, take out Channeler. Although if I cast it, I don't leave myself with the mana to Kavaero back Bringer, which could just end the game on the spot. But I think, given the board, it's safe enough to just cast Overlord. That way, if I don't mill Bringer, we're not out of the game. We did mill it, so next turn I should be able to close out the game. And for now, we're safe enough. Another Channeler is acceptable. Could remove the first one in response so they don't get to move the counter. But now I might be better off removing my own Scholar to get extra Vein Ripper triggers. How many Vein Rippers do I have? Just a 1. But plenty of Harvesters, so all of the creatures are gonna instantly die, triggering Vein Ripper in the process. So yeah, we should be alright. I guess I can do this as well. Since the opponent's creatures returning will also trigger Vein Ripper once they die again. Could attack first. I guess that's okay too. And get something else back, doesn't matter too much. But if we want to go for maximum Kavaero, I guess we would Town Greeter. Select the Bringer. And get a million triggers. Do want to make sure to not draw cards if possible, because I don't want to deck myself. But yeah, I guess we have too many Voltborn triggers on the stack, so I will technically deck myself, but I should trigger my Vein Rippers first. So that's fine, because we'll put Harvester triggers first. But yeah, you have to be careful with the Tyrants, especially when you're bringing all these creatures back at once. But it can be fun to throw 1 or 2 into the mix in the grindier matchups where you maybe don't get to pull off your combo. Alright, so a million Vein Ripper triggers. So we're gonna go from 2 life to 200s, pretty much. And there we go. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with what looks like a Keeper. Good mix of self-mill, bit of removal, ways to hit our land drops, and then just need to find a way to discard the Bringer. Up against maybe the Black-White Sacrifice self-mill deck, so they might also be able to get a whole bunch of creatures back at once. But Vein Ripper especially can be backbreaking for them, because if they want to sack their creatures, then Vein Ripper will also trigger. So that card can be hard to beat. As we see another Gorehound. A good way to quickly fill their graveyard. Immediately milling another one. And Nesting Bot will surveil 1 twice as well. And cards like the Zealot here, as a way to sacrifice creatures at will, is also pretty good in the face of Bringer, because they can just sack their entire board and essentially get all their creatures back once again, maybe triggering some stuff in the process. That being said, I guess we like Overlord, in the hopes of finding a way to discard the Bringer or just mill another copy. Oh, we just milled 1, so that works. Could still select the Scholar here, just in case. So next turn we're already good to go. 1 Harvester will also maybe trigger, destroying a bunch of the opponent's stuff. Alright, opponent's got a Blood Witch, so that will sort of counteract the Vein Ripper, but not really. Now Sephiroth will also come back. Normally they can get it back with Erase the Past, which is only mana value 2 or less. But the Bringer will give them back Sephiroth. So we do have to be careful that we don't win the opponent the game by reanimating their stuff. And this is also where active player, non-active player matters, since the triggers from the non-active player will resolve first. So all the Sephiroth triggers will happen before Vein Ripper if I reanimate in my turn. So that's also incredibly relevant. So, don't really want more creatures to die necessarily. So we're at 16. So what would happen if we Kavaero back Bringer? Then We get Volborn Tyrant, Ripper, Harvester. All those triggers go on the stack. These creatures die, triggering Blood Witch. Opponent gets back double Serve on Dam, Sephiroth, bunch of 1-drops, Zealot, which can sack creatures in response. Although at least if they sack stuff with Vein Ripper still in play, they would also trigger Vein Ripper. Unless, I guess they can let their trigger resolve, sack another thing, let their trigger resolve. But they only have Sephiroth draining us, which is probably not enough to kill me from 16. So, yeah, I'm not entirely sure what's gonna happen, but I'm down to just go for it. Could honestly just get back Vein Ripper, which would maybe be good enough, but that's not as fun. Alright, so a bunch of triggers. Let's first resolve Vein Ripper, then Tyrant, and then Harvester. And that is a lot of triggers. So it's possible our opponent can do some damage here with Sephiroth transforming as well. So as you can see, non-active triggers resolve first. We're at 10, so I guess we're just dead here if our opponent sacks their stuff. Making sure to resolve their trigger and not the Vein Ripper. Yeah, I think they're being careful, so they might actually pull it off. Alright, never mind, opponent let the Vein Ripper trigger resolve, so we gain 2. Our opponent's the one having to make all the decisions here, so we can just sit back and relax. And hopefully by the end of this, we're not dead yet. But our opponent can potentially remove Vein Ripper by sacking Serve on Dam and paying the ward. So that's the scary part. But we would still get a few Vein Ripper triggers in the process, so we'll see. First Sephiroth, Vein Ripper on the stack, that resolves. More Sephiroth triggers on the stack, Sephiroth transforms. So as the dust settles, we get to trigger Volborn Tyrant, draw a bunch of cards. And we're back up to 28. Board is wiped again by the Harvester. But now there's no Vein Ripper in play anymore. So as the dust settles, our hand's not bad. Opponent could of course have erased the past to bring everything back, and then we just die because we don't have Vein Ripper anymore. But assuming they don't, I probably want to set up another bringer. Discard Vein Ripper, even though I'm somewhat close to casting it. Alright, do you have Erase the Past? I guess with a treasure they could already pull it off. It's just going to be a Zealot instead. Into Infestation Sage. Alright, so we might have survived, at least for now. So my goal should just be to get another Vein Ripper in play. And I've got a lot of Awakens. Those can destroy Sephiroth as well. Although maybe I want to risk Town Greeter first just to hit a Landfort turn. Although it would have to be an untapped green source, so that only leaves Breeding Pool pretty much. So maybe that's not worth the risk. Do we have to destroy Sephiroth is a question. It is maybe worthwhile. Opponent does have double Blood Witch regardless. So if they hit Raise the Past, we're dead even without Sephiroth. So I guess Sephiroth can let them draw into the Raise the Past next turn. So that's a reason to still take it out. Alright, fine. Opponent will sack and surveil. And then we're just gonna turn our creature sideways. So opponent's got 35 cards remaining. Have they milled Raise the Past? They have not, so there's still likely 4 copies in the deck. Opponent's gonna sacrifice to surveil. They get a few more looks, so pretty likely to find it. They can also sack the treasure. Opponent got back the miner instead. Can sacrifice that as well. Alright, do they keep on top? They don't, so still a blind draw step for Raise the Past. Did they get there? Well, they didn't immediately cast it, so I assume they didn't. Just a Sephiroth. So then we should be fine here. Well, this was at the very least an entertaining game. Probably could have avoided going for Bringer and then just relied on Vein Ripper to stop the opponent, but this was hopefully the more entertaining sequence. So can attack all out, and our opponent seems pretty dead to me. Otherwise, what would happen? Next turn we get back Kavaero, and we can do it all over again. Although I'm not sure I want to go through that once again. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. Hand is keepable. Relying on Overlord to set up the graveyard initially. Ideally mill Bringer to set up Kavaero. Opponent on maybe blue-black midrange. Drew into the Bringer, so Scholar can discard it. And do we play Starting Town? I think I'll save myself the damage. Would be a different story if I had a 4th land in hand already. Milled all lands and a Bringer, can leave that there. Scholar likely discards both Tyrant and Bringer. Although if our opponent's keeping up counter spells, things might get more complicated. Well, this is the only play I have. Yep, spell stutter, that's annoying. So now I'm stuck with all these expensive creatures in hand. Now if Kavaero resolves, I can still bring back Bringer, and then we should be alright. I guess we could Awaken, which eventually also gets back something from the graveyard. Or maybe baits out another counterspell. Spell stutter number 2. The Overlord's also eventually turning into a creature, although they might bounce it. Opponent's gonna explore to try and hit their land drop, so maybe they're out of counter spells to keep up, if that's the case. So we can still impend the Overlord at the very least. And then what do we like? Probably the Scholar, since I need to use it to hit my land drops. Although Harvester being an uncounterable removal spell is kind of nice. Could just go for another Kavaero and hope to just go back to back, hope one of them resolves. But at least Scholar also gives us something that can trade for a Siren. So yeah. Both struggling to hit our land drops. Opponent does have a Sailor to flash in. So I do expect their deck to have a lot of counter spells. So their deck might be kind of designed to beat these graveyard combo decks that just need to resolve one big spell. So we'll see. We're down to 11. Starting Town not doing us any favors. And now Harvester. So if I cast Scholar, our opponent could counter it and then still have a bounce spell for the Overlord. Whereas if I Harvester, they can't really counter it. I remove 2 damage from their clock. I think I prefer that. Even though I'm not hitting my land drop, and my land might be entering tapped. So it's still not ideal. Could also see Tishana's Tidebinder maybe counter one of these triggers. So Overlord's in play, doesn't get bounced. It's gonna be a trick. Okay, so take out Siren while we can. So our opponent has the luxury of playing at instant speed. Step 1 attack. If we go for Kavaero, it's very unlikely to resolve. So maybe I'm better off going Scholar, tapped Breeding Pool. I'll be at 7, so not necessarily dead on board. Overlord getting back Harvester can also buy me more time by removing their creatures. Would love for them to tap out here. And yeah, they had the Tidebinder. But they're gonna get punished for countering the Overlord trigger. As we can go land into Kavaero. Which brings back Bringer, which likely wins us the game. And then we have another Kavaero. This one, I guess, could exile a Tidebinder. So they don't get it back. Don't need to counter anything. Now we didn't have Vein Ripper in play. So I guess we don't just straight up win the game. And we did Viper on board, but that's where the Voltborn Tyrant's useful too. Drawing us a million cards, and then now we can just set up another Kavaero, discarding Bringer, Vein Ripper, maybe another Tyrant, something along these lines. And now they're facing a 6/6 Trampler, we're back up to 27. And yeah, our opponent has seen enough, awesome! So yeah, even against counter spells, if they're not careful and tap out at the wrong time, we can just win out of nowhere. So overall, quite satisfied with this Sultai Reanimator deck. There's a lot of ways to construct your Kavaero/Superior Spider-Man Reanimator decks. I featured one before out of the preview event with Arden and the threefold Thunderhulk, which is also pretty synergistic with Kavaero, but just winning the game on the spot with Bringer is also quite tempting, so we'll see how these decks develop over time, but for now it seems like the most powerful deck coming out of through the Omen Path. So yeah, that's going to do it for today's gameplay. I want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.